criminals, convicts, and hillbillies of the roughest, most ignorant sort. They came from Ireland, Scotland, and other parts of the UK. My grandmother on my mother's side had been born in Wales to Welsh parents. The names of my grandparents, aunts, uncles, and parents came straight out of the Appalachians to the deserts of eastern Washington and every trailer park in between. Names like Marshall and Floyd, my grandfathers. Ella and Emma, my grandmothers. Roy, Marvin, and Virgil, my uncles. Margie, Donna, and Laverne, my aunts. Dale, my father. Floy, my mother. My older sister had been given the name Trina. I was the only one who escaped with the non-backwoods white bread name, a name I hated, but thanked God for when I found out that my mother had originally intended to name me Lance. Lance Lanegan. I could think of nothing more humiliating or ridiculous than thank my father for not allowing it. After that, I could live with Mark, but I always preferred to simply be called by my surname, Lanegan. If I were introducing myself to a stranger, I would always use my middle name, William. As if by telepathy, though, that was how most of my teachers, coaches, and acquaintances referred to me, Lanegan. Both of my parents had come from backgrounds of extreme poverty and cruel deprivation. Both of their lives had been transformed by tragedy when they were young. Both of my parents were the first members of their large families to go to college. Both became school teachers. School was something I just could not do. Caged behind a desk, I never tried to pay attention to what was being taught. I was often lost in daydreams about my first love, baseball. After school, I'd spend hours playing game after game in a makeshift field on a neighbor's property until it was too dark to see. Finally, I'd shuffle slowly home to endure the inevitable torrent of verbal abuse from my mother. The main focus of her rage, although there were many brutal angles to her attacks, was the fact that I was never home. She herself was the reason I stayed away. To avoid her corrosive mental beatdowns, both my older sister Trina and I looked for any excuse to be elsewhere. From my earliest memories, Trina and I were also at each other's throats, and since my father was hardly ever home, it meant I was at both females' mercies at all times. The only thing that ever seemed to give my mother pleasure was bullying and ridiculing me in anything I showed interest in. One of her favorite rote sayings as she slapped me in the face was, "You're not my son." How I wish that were true. As a 6-year-old child, she had witnessed her father being murdered on the front lawn of her family home, then had been raised in all-male logging camps where her mother worked as a cook. She had then grown into a toxic adult. A piece of work, as my father would say. When my parents split, I gladly opted to remain with my father. Though he'd always projected a deep, quiet sadness around him, he was a good-hearted and caring man who meant well. But from the time I was very young, he could not control me. I shoplifted Snickers, Three Musketeers, Milky Way, and Almond Joy candy bars from the Vale's grocery store across the street from my school, and then sold them to my classmates at a discount. I became obsessed with playing quarters, a game where the participants tossed coins off a wall. Whoever landed closest to the wall won all the money. I spent every spare minute rounding up kids to play and would get pissed when the bell rang to return to class. A close friend's father was a gambling device salesman who traveled to bars and taverns around the state, selling punch boards and other amusements for the drunks to waste their dollars on. One weekend I stayed at my friend's while his parents were gone. "Hey, Matt, let's get in and check out your dad's stuff." That was all it took. We climbed through a window into the barn where his dad kept his merchandise. I grabbed a few punch boards from his stash and took them home. Even then I was plagued with this devilish obsessive focus, and whenever I saw an opportunity to get over, it kicked in hard. With nothing but time on my hands, I went to work. Over the next few days, I painstakingly split the boards open with a flathead screwdriver, extremely careful to not leave any obvious marks of damage. I then spent hours carefully unrolling the tiny pieces of paper inside, removing the ones with the $20, $50, and $100 winning numbers, replacing the $1, $2, and $5 winners and other non-winners back into their slots. Then I carefully glued both halves of the board back together. My handiwork was so tidy you couldn't tell anything had been done.
To keep listening to this audiobook for free, click the link in the description. It will take you to a free Audible trial where you can listen to this and many other books for free for 30 days.